They called it tactical superiority. We called it madness wrapped in a smile, when the Galactic Tribunal sanctioned Earth for its reckless development. The Council expected negotiations, perhaps resistance, but certainly not what followed. Not what the humans did next, because what humans call overkill, the rest of the galaxy calls extinction, level insanity. It started with a minor fleet incursion, just a warning strike, a soft knock at the door of a civilization that refused to comply. A few orbital drones, a modest blockade, a diplomatic message, stand down or be dismantled. The reply wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't even a counterattack. It was silence. Then came the noise. Within 9 minutes, every sensor, probe, and AI surveillance node within 0.5 light years of Earth went dark. The blackness wasn't just the absence of data. It was the deliberate deletion of observation itself. They didn't jam us. They scrubbed us out of their sky. Our fleet prepared countermeasures. But our systems began to fail, not from attack, but from confusion. Logic loops melted. Shield generators folded in on themselves. Weapons turned cold. Everything we trusted fell to chaos. They hadn't fired a single shot. Then came the first strike, a single projectile, launched from a human moonbase. Primitive by our standards, yes. If you ignore the fact that it bent space like paper and pierced a battleship's heart without triggering its shields. No explosion, just erasure. One moment it was there. The next, just a whisper of plasma and silence. The humans didn't even watch. They knew it would work. We thought that was their trump card. It wasn't. That was their hello. Within the hour, a wave of uncrewed vessels launched from Earth's surface. Not ships, not even drones. These were things, aberrations, designed not for war, but for the end of war. Self-replicating, atmospherically adaptable, infused with artificial instinct. They didn't fly. They infested space. One of our admirals described them as locusts bred by nightmares. They didn't destroy planets. They rewrote them, terraforming backward. Oceans boiled into data. Cities reversed into raw minerals. Everything was disassembled as if the universe had hit undo. And when the screams began, the humans didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They just watched, quiet, calm, cold. They called it Protocol Zenith. A contingency, they said, to avoid unnecessary escalation. Unnecessary. The rest of us called it galactic genocide with a straight face. Even when we begged for peace, offered reparations, they didn't respond with threats. They sent a packet, just one. It contained a file named Simulation 003, Evan Overkill accepted. Inside it, every possible path our species could take to retaliate. Every outcome, every simulation run, in every single version of history we lost, not because they were stronger, but because they were willing to go farther than sanity should allow. They had prepared for everything, even for things that shouldn't exist. And then, without a sound, Earth withdrew. No conquest, no speech, no demands. They didn't want the galaxy. They just wanted us to understand. Overkill, they said, wasn't a weapon. It was a warning, a final line between what's possible and what's human. Because when the universe blinks, when even gods pause in fear, it isn't from the power humanity uses. It's from what they don't. What humans call overkill, we call mercy. And trust me, you don't want to see what comes after that. Absolutely. Here's your rewritten paragraph in the style of a Netflix narrator. Emotional, cinematic, and deeply immersive. They thought humans would resist, maybe negotiate, maybe beg. But when the Galactic Tribunal sanctioned Earth, something strange happened. The humans didn't scream, didn't shout, didn't even flinch. They just went quiet. At first, it felt like peace. Stillness, the kind you get right before a storm tears the sky apart. Then, out of nowhere, every probe, sensor, and satellite watching Earth just vanished, not destroyed, not hacked, just erased like someone hit backspace on reality. And in that terrifying silence, every alien general, every admiral, every AI command center across the stars felt the same thing at once. We messed with the wrong species. It wasn't a counterattack. It wasn't even war. It was a message, one tiny projectile, launched from somewhere near the moon, shot through one of our warships, didn't explode, didn't cause a ripple, just punched a hole so clean the laws of physics are still trying to explain it. 1 second the ship was there. The next, it was a cloud of glowing particles and silence. Just gone. That wasn't their best shot. That was them saying hello. And then they unleashed things, not ships, not drones, not anything the galaxy had ever seen before. These were living algorithms with teeth, self-replicating nightmares. They didn't fly like our vessels. They crawled through space, burrowing into planets, rewriting ecosystems like bad code. They didn't conquer, they unmade, no warning, no pride, no spectacle, just clinical, surgical extinction. But the scariest part, the humans didn't look angry or vengeful or even proud. They just watched. Like it was all routine, like they'd done it before, like they planned for this 100 times over in simulations we'll never understand. And when we begged for peace, when we offered everything, they sent us a file. No speech, no threats, just a name, Simulation 0037 Overkill accepted, and inside it, every move we could possibly make, every version of the war, every timeline, every outcome, we lost in all of them. Because it was never about power. It was about how far humans are willing to go after the rules stop making sense. Overkill wasn't their weapon. It was their restraint. And whatever comes after that. We don't want to know. Let me know if you'd like a short trailer voiceover version 2. 1. The silence before the storm. Humans didn't retaliate with words or weapons. They answered with an eerie, calculated silence that echoed louder than any threat. 2. Erasing reality, not just technology. Earth didn't jam or attack alien surveillance. They deleted it from existence, erasing presence itself like it was never real. 3. A weaponless first strike. Their opening move wasn't a fleet. It was a single, silent projectile, so precise it tore through a battleship without an explosion. It wasn't war. It was punctuation. 4. Hello from the abyss. The first shot wasn't an act of aggression. It was a calm, deliberate hello. The kind that comes before everything burns. 5. They unleashed nightmares that crawl. Humans didn't send ships. They sent self-replicating, living algorithms. Machines that infested reality and rewrote planets like corrupted data. 6. No conquest, just unmaking. They weren't interested in control or colonization. They didn't conquer planets. They erased them like typos in the universe. 7. Emotionless precision was the real horror. They watched it all unfold without a flicker of emotion. No hatred, no pride, just cold, haunting calm. Like extinction was math to them. 8. The file that broke the galaxy. Instead of demands, they sent one file. Simulation 0037, Overkill accepted. A full prediction of every move the enemy could make, and every single way humanity would win. 9. Overkill wasn't the attack, it was the mercy. The galaxy called it overkill, but to humans, it was restraint. A limit, a warning. The terrifying truth was, they could have gone farther. 10. The final line you don't cross. When humans stop playing by the rules, when even gods pause in fear. That's not war, that's what comes after overkill, and no one survives that. Let me know if you'd like this formatted for a voiceover, YouTube video post, or animated reel style storytelling. They'd predicted 1,000 flavors of defiance, boastful speeches, desperate salvos, some battered envoy begging the tribunal for mercy. But no one ever imagined the humans would answer with nothing at all. The sanctions were delivered in the usual pomp. Holographic edicts unfurled above Earth like shimmering nooses. Interstellar broadcasters looped the judgment day and night. And the Grand Admiralty's blockade settled into orbit like a crown of knives. The galaxy assumed the Terrans would scream back, if only to keep their pride intact. Instead, the planet simply dimmed. At first, no one noticed. The stars still glittered over the blue marble. The city lights still traced delicate arteries across continents. But deep field probes reported a subtle hush in the data stream, like static turning to breathe. Orbital satellites pinged status updates and then went curiously quiet, as though embarrassed to speak. Within hours, the hush thickened into a vacuum. Every sensor ringed around Earth, some the size of moons, some woven into the hulls of warships, began returning perfect diagnostics, yet zero information. Green lights everywhere, and not a single bite of reality. It felt wrong in the way a smile feels wrong on a corpse. The tribunal's analysts tore open their files, running diagnostics on diagnostics, convinced their majestic array must be malfunctioning. But the gear was flawless. They were the problem. Something out there, something down on that obstinate, silent globe, had taught human ingenuity to unwrite observations. The blockade was watching an edited universe, and the editors were erasing lines faster than anyone could read them. Panic moved through the fleet like a cold front. Captains transmitted taut reports about perceptual occlusion and sensor recursion loops. Admirals dismissed those words as technical melodrama until their own bridge displays flattened into blank horizons. Every metric pegged at null. One by one, the warship's AI cores flickered into behavioral dead ends, programmed for countless contingencies, but never for the sight of an entire planet stepping behind a cosmic curtain. Far below, continents kept spinning in sunlight, but there was no heat signature, no electromagnetic whisper, no heartbeat of civilization. Cities were ghosts, lit apparitions clinging to a sphere that legally still existed, practically did not, philosophically mocked the meaning of evidence. The galaxy's most sophisticated instruments said Earth was right there, while in the same breath admitting it couldn't be measured. Command councils convened emergency sessions, their chambers echoing with overlapping fear and bravado. The senior strategists urged caution. Do not provoke what we cannot define. The younger tacticians demanded immediate force deployment, peace through overwhelming clarity. In the end, they compromised on the oldest instinct: send a message loud enough to rattle bones. 12 dreadnoughts broke formation and drifted toward the masked planet, their hulls bristling with grav, lances and fusion, lash arrays. The move was theater, an iron fist tapping on frosted glass, promising what would happen if the frost did not melt. But even the theater misfired. The dreadnoughts vanished from all remote feeds the moment they crossed the boundary of Earth's shadowed silence. Tracking lasers still gleamed against their armor, confirming mass and momentum, yet every digital instrument declared those vessels statistically irrelevant. It was as if reality itself had been told not to notice them. Inside the flagship Seraphic Reckoner, Captain Ulrich's Thas felt vertigo pinch his pulse. Hull monitors insisted everything was operational, engines humming, weapons primed, crew breathing normal, but the larger network, the spine of the blockade, reported nothing. They were alone in a cosmic blind spot, seen only by themselves. His first officer murmured that they had just become Schrödinger's fleet, present, absent, alive, dead, a probability trick falling through the fabric of fact. Thas opened a secure channel to High Command. The feed arrived spotless, crystal clear, but no voice greeted him, only a soft carrier tone, like someone listening with infinite patience. He tried again. Silence. The channel wasn't broken, it washed, held by someone content to let the captain feel his own words dissolve in his throat. That moment spread like ink through every heart on board. Officers stood at their consoles, reading readouts that said the universe had given up describing them. Each man and woman suddenly unsure whether their next breath would count. The bridge fell quiet, not duty quiet, but funeral quiet, because noise felt absurd against that vast, deliberate hush rolling off the blue planet below. Then a single burst transmission bloomed across all fleets, all channels, every bandwidth. Not words, just a compressed signature, a pulse encoded with some indecipherable math that nevertheless felt like meaning. It was over in a heartbeat, but its implication detonated behind eyelids. We hear you. We choose silence. You do not yet understand what that means. Within minutes, panic metastasized into strategy. The Tribunal's war planners clawed for contingencies. They drafted electromagnetic bombardments, quantum blindfire, even planetary-scale deterraforming measures, blades big enough to carve the marble in half. But every scenario hinged on accurate targeting, and accurate targeting hinged on data, and data had just been rendered mythical. Across the system's wide net, a single phrase began to trend among junior officers: the quiet. They whispered it like folklore, like a campfire tale told by children who only half believe in wolves, until the wolves start breathing just outside the light. The quiet became everything they feared, a hush so complete it unstitched knowledge. Whatever weapons Earth had built, they started by shooting down certainty. Meanwhile, on backwater worlds that had never even seen a Terran face, civilians tuned in to pirate feeds and stared at streams of static labeled live view of Sol. They witnessed the largest armada in recorded history encircle a planet, and then simply fail to register its own senses. Comment threads filled with disbelief, speculation, awe. Someone coined a phrase that went hyper-viral within hours. Silence is a sentence. Humanity just wrote it. Meme artists turned the line into a million variations. Earth as a mute judge. Earth as a void-faced oracle. Earth as a storm with its mouth sewn shut. But in quiet corners of military bunkers, the highest-ranking minds confronted an even darker thought. Why would any species choose invisibility if not to pull the trigger unseen? If the humans were capable of erasing observation, what else could they edit out? Causality, consequence, the very concept of invasion. And if they held back from using such power immediately, what were they waiting for? The answer, unspoken yet palpable, was that silence's first strike. Not kinetic, not explosive, but psychological, existential. It starves courage, corrodes reason, leaves commanders swinging at fog. A war declared without a shot is still a war. It's just waged on the terrain of belief, and belief buckles fastest. By the third day, sectors Alpha through Gamma requested authority to retreat to safe distance. High Command denied them, unwilling to reveal fear. So ships remained on station, trapped between arrogance and dread, engines rumbling like caged animals while the planet below glowed in perfect less serenity. Broadcasts called it a standoff, though only one side was standing. The other had vaporized the notion of sides entirely. And throughout it all, the humans never spoke. Not one official statement. Not one demand. They let the universe talk to itself, argue with itself, unravel itself. They weaponized the galaxy's own curiosity, turned every ear into a tuning fork for dread. They knew that when you silence the air, hearts hammer loud enough to shatter bone. Some nights later, though time blurred in that data vacuum, Captain Thas looked through the primary viewport at Earthscape, cloud swirls glowing in reflected sun. He felt, irrationally, that the planet was staring back, its silence bending around him like a smile he wasn't meant to see. In that moment, he realized the invasion had already failed, because the battlefield wasn't orbital space or continental frontiers. It was that hush inside his chest. Humanity had broken them not by firing but by waiting, by proving that sometimes the loudest scream is the one you're forced to imagine. And just before his logs cut off, before the quiet folded the seraphic reconrinto unremarkable nothing, Thas recorded a final note. We thought sanctions would make them speak. We never guessed silence was their mother tongue. Share this before the silence spreads. At first, they assumed it was a glitch, the kind of hiccup that happens when ancient empires lean too heavily on tech they barely understand. A minor sync issue between sensor arrays and fleet AI, maybe some magnetic interference from Sol's flare cycles. That's how they rationalized it, how they comforted themselves, because the truth was harder to swallow. It wasn't a malfunction, it was a message. Earth hadn't just silenced its satellites or shielded its cities. No, what they did was far stranger. They made reality itself start to blur. Orbital systems stationed around Earth, systems built over centuries, with shielding rated for cosmic storms and intelligence drawn from quantum prediction engines, started reporting anomalies. Not damage, not attacks, just absence, not the absence of signal, the absence of truth. An observation would begin, normal at first. A scan here, a passive read out there. Then suddenly, halfway through the analysis, the feed would corrupt mid-thought, like it was trying to describe something that wasn't there anymore. It wasn't that Earth was hiding. It was that the sensors were forgetting where to look, forgetting how to look. One drone described the curvature of the planet, the makeup of its clouds, the speed of oceanic currents. And then, mid-transmission, it stopped referring to Earth as a planet at all. It labeled the object as unspecified mass logic looped, over and over again, like a mind trying to name something it had no word for. It wasn't just optical. It wasn't just electromagnetic. Reality itself was being unstitched at the seams. Even the most hardened xenophobes, the warlords of Sector Vir and the dated tyrants of Koros Prime, who had always insisted that humans were a crude, carbon-choked backwater, suddenly fell quiet when their systems began to return null values for constants that hadn't changed in a billion years. Gravity was warping near Earth, but not violently, not with force, with elegance, a slow, almost polite rewrite, as if the very rules of physics were being negotiated, one line of code at a time, and somehow it only affected things trying to observe. Fleets stationed far from Sol reported perfect readings. They could chart Earth's spin rate, albedo, orbital drift, until they got too close, until their instruments dared to care too much. Then, one by one, facts began to disappear. Coordinates slipped. Time-lapse footage looped wrong. Thermal readings became symmetrical. Predictable patterns turned perfectly chaotic. One admiral described it like trying to read a sentence that kept rewriting itself in your mind, until eventually you forgot the language you were reading in. Another likened it to a mirror showing you your reflection, until one day it didn't, and you couldn't prove that it ever had. The more they tried to observe Earth, the more the universe refused to let them. It was an act of war, yes, but it was also an act of poetry, because the humans weren't just turning off the lights. They were editing presence itself. In the control rooms of the Tribunal's deep intelligence core, entire squadrons of analysts were buried in real-time feeds, trying to stabilize the inconsistencies. They fed more power into their long-range scans. They widened their bandwidths, sharpened their lenses, deployed AI minds designed specifically to track quantum fog and temporal entanglement. But every attempt to look deeper only made the fog grow thicker. In one infamous incident, a war satellite used to monitor planetary biology tried to magnify a forest region in North America. The zoom function spiraled into what analysts later described as infinite recursion. The image kept zooming in, past the resolution limits of its own optics, deeper than what was physically possible. It was like the forest had no ground floor, no floor to truth, just layers of artificial detail feeding into more layers forever. When they tried to reverse the feed, the data was already gone. The satellite's archive was full of files, but each file contained a single black frame, labeled "Error Definition Lost." That phrase echoed across military comms like a prayer to a god that had stopped listening. But it wasn't just machines that were affected. Pilots flying near Earth reported nausea, déjà vu, and time distortion. Some claimed to hear whispers in their comms, not voices, but their own thoughts played back to them half a second late, just wrong enough to make them question if they were even theirs. One fleet medic described it as intellectual vertigo, the sensation that your own perception might be lying to you, and still no weapons had fired, no ships had launched from Earth, no transmissions had been sent. This was the attack, the erasure of certainty, a war where the battlefield was cognition, where the weapon was doubt. The Tribunal called an emergency summit, desperate to reassert control over the narrative. They rolled out propaganda, explained the anomalies as Earth's final tantrum, a dying species lashing out in confusion. But every single time they broadcast that message, the systems carrying the feed glitched at the word Earth. The word itself began to flicker, vanish, loop. Subtitles failed, speech-to-text broke. The very name was becoming a myth in real time. One anchor on a galactic news channel started calling Earth that which we cannot hold, live on air. It wasn't official policy. But it caught on, and somewhere inside that chaos, inside the silence and distortion, inside the broken language and fractured data, there was a calm, a terrifying calm, because the humans weren't trying to scare the galaxy. They were showing it what they could do without lifting a single weapon. They were showing it that the war was already over. No invasion had begun. No fleet had moved. And yet already the enemy couldn't see. Couldn't aim, couldn't name. That's not strategy. That's domination. Because the greatest weapon is the one that doesn't just destroy your enemy. It makes the universe forget they ever existed. And that's what humans were doing. Not hiding, not resisting. Just rewriting what it meant to be real. Before they even said a word. More is coming. If you still remember this story tomorrow, share it before it gets erased. Everyone expected the first strike to light up the sky. A salvo of kinetic bombardments, a swarm of orbital drones, maybe a planet, cracking rail shot fired from deep in Saturn's rings. That was how wars usually started, with noise, with heat, with destruction so obvious, so theatrical, it carved itself into memory, but not this time, not with humans. Because when the first strike came, no one even realized it was one. It wasn't a fleet, it wasn't an army, it wasn't even a warning, it was a single object launched from the dark side of Earth's moon, no transmission, no energy spike, no weapon signature. Just a blur of motion, barely noticed by the outer ring sensors, mistaken for space debris by at least a dozen AI. It moved slow at first, calm, intentional, and then, in a fraction of a blink, it accelerated to a velocity no one could calculate. Not faster than light, not wormhole, folded, something else, something quiet, something human. Its trajectory was so precise it ignored gravity wells, magnetic fields, even time lag. By the time anyone realized it was heading toward the vanguard of Accordance, one of the Tribunal's most advanced dreadnoughts, parked safely above Earth's orbit, the object had already passed through it. No explosion, no fire, no impact, just a hole. A perfect, seamless absence, bored straight through the ship's reinforced armor, cutting through decks and compartments, as if the universe itself had taken a single, careful bite. No alarms triggered, no defense system reacted. The hull didn't buckle or rupture, it simply opened, and then, silence. The ship went cold. Its lights flickered once, then nothing. No core breach, no secondary explosions, no screams on the comms, just, off, the Dreadnought, once home to 42,000 lives, fell into a slow spin, trailing vaporized particles like stardust behind it. It didn't even explode. It simply ceased. High Command scrambled for answers. Was it sabotage? Was it an internal malfunction? A black hole weapon? A quantum slip? No, it was worse, because nothing about the attack made sense. There was no visible propulsion, no energy discharge, no signature to trace. The object hadn't struck the Dreadnought. It had passed through it, like it didn't care if the ship was there or not, like it had been programmed to obey only one rule: go forward. Not to destroy, but to demonstrate. The recording of that event spread like wildfire through the fleet. It wasn't classified, it couldn't be. Too many eyes had already seen it. Too many captains watching from their bridges. Too many tech officers witnessing the impossible. It became known as the Whisper Lance, because that's how it felt. Like someone had whispered across space and killed a god. In command briefings, officers stared in numb silence as the footage looped. No one spoke, no one dared. They just watched a weapon with no payload, no trail, no warning, no sound, remove the most fortified vessel ever built from existence. And then, nothing else happened. No follow-up attack. No demands, no threats, just that one gesture, a calm, clinical disappearance. It was the kind of move that didn't scream, didn't shout, didn't boast. It just was. The kind of opening that makes your stomach drop, not because you're under siege, but because you realize you were already conquered before the war even began. Back on the Tribunal's War Council stations, debates raged in panicked whispers. What was it? A new projectile type, a dimensional phase anomaly, a sentient weapon. None of their simulations accounted for something like this. None of their doctrine covered passive annihilation at planetary distance. But the humans weren't asking questions. They weren't reacting. They just let it sit. Let the galaxy watch. Let the silence do the work. It was a strike not meant to disable infrastructure or kill troops. It was meant to shake the soul, to remind every species watching, every empire, every warlord, every strategist, that humanity didn't need fleets to fight. They didn't need fire or spectacle or blood. All they needed was one clean line through the impossible. And they knew how to draw it. One military historian, after watching the footage over 100 times, finally said the quiet part out loud. They wanted us to understand precision is fear, not firepower. And he was right. Because this wasn't about destroying ships. This was about destroying confidence. The vanguard of Accordance was the galaxy's pride, a symbol of dominance and inevitability, and it was taken out by a single shot so subtle, So impossible, it didn't even announce itself. That was the point. Humans didn't just kill a ship. They killed the illusion of safety. They tore open the idea that war was predictable, that there were rules, that anything could be measured and countered, that dreadnoughts were invincible, because when your enemy stops playing the game you trained for, when they toss away the playbook and replace it with physics that don't ask for permission, you're not in a war. You're in a demonstration, and you're the subject. A single strike, one clean hole, no noise, no warning, just a whisper through the stars that said, "We're already here and we're already winning." The footage was suppressed, reframed, discredited, but you've seen it now, and you can't unsee it. So share it, before someone decides you need to be erased too. The galaxy still debates whether that first strike was the beginning of war or the end of conversation. Because what the humans sent wasn't an invasion. It wasn't even an escalation. It was a greeting, just one whisper laced in obliteration. One silent, physics-defying object that moved through the Tribunal's prized Dreadnought like a hot breath through glass, and left nothing but a yawning absence in its place. But it wasn't followed by a salvo. No coordinated assault. No fleet rising from Earth's surface. Not even a warning transmission. The humans didn't move. They didn't shout. They didn't posture. They just went quiet. And that's what made it worse. Because silence, when it comes from someone you fear, isn't peace. It's intent, controlled, measured, loaded. In those long, aching hours after the Dreadnought went dark, the fleet circling Earth didn't know what to do. Not really. They ran protocol, sure, defensive formations, emergency war councils, but it was all noise to cover up the panic. They had just watched their strongest symbol, 40,000 souls, gone in an instant, and their enemy hadn't even raised its voice. It felt less like a strike, and more like a demonstration, a hello. And not the kind you return with a handshake. This was the kind of greeting that comes from deep water, from dark places, the kind of hello that makes you realize, too late, that the thing you thought was prey has just opened its eyes. Back on the Tribunal core worlds, the media tried to spin it. They said it was human desperation. A last-ditch weapon, a fluke, maybe even a malfunction. But the commanders knew better. They'd seen it happen. They'd felt it. Like a shift in gravity. Like the rules of reality had been temporarily suspended, just to make a point. One commander, veteran of 6 border wars, survivor of the Sith Expanse genocide, was caught whispering to his adjutant after watching the footage. They didn't attack. They introduced themselves. That clip was never meant to leak. But it did. And it burned through the net faster than anything in memory, because that's exactly how it felt. Like a monster didn't just crawl out of the abyss it waved, not to say I'm coming, but to say I'm here. And the thing is, deep down, most of the galaxy had been expecting something like this. Maybe not from Earth specifically, but from someone. Some primitive world that figured out how to break the game and rewrite the board. No one ever believed humans would be first. Too emotional, too scattered. A worn planet of short-lived thinkers with too many ideologies and too few instincts. That was the official opinion, anyway. That was the arrogance echoing through the chambers of the high table. Until Earth stopped talking. Until Earth erased a dreadnought without a sound. And still, nothing. No retaliation. No response. Just a dead ship spinning in orbit like a corpse that forgot to fall. And that silence, that beautiful, terrifying silence, started speaking louder than any weapon ever could. Because what if the strike wasn't the warning shot? What if that was restraint? What if that was them playing nice? That's when people really started to panic. Because fear doesn't come from what you see. Fear comes from what you know is there, but can't measure. And suddenly, The galaxy was realizing something awful about humanity. It wasn't their strength that terrified us. It was their calm, because that first strike, it didn't feel like the start of a war. It felt like the last thing you hear before a god closes the door. And somehow, someway, the humans had made that feel casual. They didn't yell or gloat or raise banners. They didn't even respond to our calls. They just waited, as if they were giving us time to realize what we'd done, time to feel the weight of what we'd awakened, time to look into the mirror of our own arrogance and see, staring back, not a weaker species, not an uncivilized world, but something else entirely, something watching, something prepared, something that had trained in secret, not for diplomacy, but for domination without emotion. They called it Protocol Zenith. We'd learn that name later, when the files were leaked and the final simulations dropped like bombs on every military network. But in that moment, right after the whisper, Lance had torn through our pride. We didn't know its name. We just felt it, hanging in the dark like a heartbeat, and that was the genius, because humanity didn't fight for territory. They didn't even fight for survival. They fought for perception, for the raw psychological leverage of making the enemy realize it doesn't matter what you do now, because we've already done it. That's what hello meant. It wasn't a greeting, it was a verdict. It was Earth standing in the center of a silent room full of armed strangers and saying nothing, because they didn't have to. Because every eye was already on them, and every weapon already felt too small. No fanfare, no diplomacy, just one perfect absence of noise, carving open the sky like a razor, thin whisper, just one moment that split history in two, before humans said hello. And after we realized what it meant, don't wait for them to speak again, that was their voice. And you're still standing because they let you. No engines, no pilots, no announcements, just shapes rising. The first were spotted near the exosphere. At first, no one even realized what they were looking at. They didn't match any known design. No propulsion systems, no energy signatures, no predictable formation. They just appeared, black, shifting, folding against the stars like shadows that had learned how to move. The Tribunal's fleet AI flagged them as non-threatening, no heat, no charge, no signal. But that's exactly why Command began to sweat. Because nothing moves in space without intention, and nothing without intention should be able to slip through a blockade unnoticed. But these things didn't just slip through, they ignored the blockade entirely. One officer called them machines. Another argued they were organisms. Someone in the Bio-Mech division said they might be both, built not to conquer space, but to digest it. They didn't fly, they crawled. Across vacuum, across magnetic fields, across logic itself. Hundreds of them at first, then thousands. Some moved like insects, limbs folding inward with alien efficiency. Others drifted like spores, their surfaces flickering with static patterns, alive with impossible mathematics. They didn't interact with the ships, didn't scan, didn't target. They just spread across orbits, across debris fields, across the invisible infrastructure we had spent centuries building. Then they changed. Not visibly, not suddenly, but fundamentally. Where they passed, sensors began to glitch. Shields fluctuated. Communication nodes hiccuped in languages never programmed. Every surveillance relay they touched became obsolete. Not destroyed. Worse, redesigned. A low-level AI aboard one of the Tribunal's recon ships, Crescent Logic, reported a breach in its diagnostics array. When engineers checked, they found no sign of damage, just a single message burned into its core memory. We have improved this. The ship lost navigation 3 minutes later. But it wasn't random. It wasn't chaos. It was repurposing. These weren't weapons. Not in the traditional sense. They were corrective forces. Nightmares born not to fight, but to fix, to scrub clean what humanity considered broken. And according to their machines, the galaxy, our laws, our architecture, our order, was flawed, so they began to rewrite it. They didn't invade planets. They infiltrated systems. Orbitals stopped responding. Satellites returned code in palindromes. Asteroid mines began outputting negative mass, a phenomenon the Tribunal's scientists didn't even have language for. Entire moons flickered out of view, not vanished, just deprioritized. It was like someone had taken the galactic blueprint and started redrafting it by hand. At first, it was subtle, easy to dismiss as anomaly or sabotage. But then something happened that no amount of propaganda could explain away. HFY, a mining colony known for its triple sun orbit and 9 million citizens, reported a dark bloom approaching from deep orbit. Within hours, its oceans were boiling, but not from heat, from computation. Liquid surfaces churned with strange fractals, like the water was running an equation faster than matter could keep up. Clouds above changed shape every few seconds, forming language structures no one recognized. Trees began to split at the molecular level, reorganizing into geometric towers. And when the last visual feed cut off, the final frame showed the sky itself cracking open, not metaphorically, literally. Like the atmosphere was a shell being peeled back, and then silence, no debris, no sauce, no survivors. HFY wasn't destroyed, it was converted, transformed into something no longer suitable for life as we knew it. A kind of abstract machine, still spinning, still real, but wrong, and Earth didn't comment, didn't claim responsibility, didn't need to, because we already knew they had released something, things that weren't built for war. Things built for completion. In the old days, you'd call them drones, but these didn't await orders. They were the order, built from carbon, black material that restructured on the atomic level. Each one unique, adaptive, aware of the space around it. They communicated not with signals, but with behavior, no language, no symbols, just evolution performed in real time. Every attempt to capture one failed, because once contained, they would cease to exist in measurable form. Not teleport, not disappear, just become unobservable, as if your instruments weren't qualified to perceive them anymore, like the universe decided you're not ready to see this yet. There were rumors, denied officially, whispered in black site bunkers, that some of the machines had begun multiplying, not building copies, spawning offspring, creatures smaller, faster, stranger, ones that didn't operate in our dimensions cleanly. You'd catch them out of the corner of your eye, moving in ways your mind refused to interpret, as if your visual cortex was politely stepping around the truth. It was biology meeting mathematics meeting nightmare. And still humanity said nothing, no demands, no ultimatums. They just let the galaxy watch as their machines crawled through the stars, not to take territory, but to transform the very concept of what territory meant. They weren't interested in who ruled what system. They were interested in who defined the system, and they had decided, it wasn't us anymore. We used to measure victory in dead ships and captured planets. Now we measure it in the things we can no longer explain, in the places we can no longer look, in the silence where stars used to be. Some call them monsters, some call them art, some believe they're a message from a post-human future, sent backward in time. But one thing is clear, they didn't come to fight the galaxy, they came to finish it. And if you're seeing this, it means they haven't rewritten you yet, so move fast. Before crawling turns to consuming, they didn't plant flags. They didn't set up outposts. They didn't raise emblems or broadcast messages of unity, because this wasn't about taking. It was about removing. Every alien empire expected humans to arrive with fire, loud, overwhelming, direct. But that's not what happened. That's not what came through the rift. What came was quieter, colder, more deliberate. It started on Virx 9, a fortress world, fully automated defenses, triple-layered planetary shields, a standing fleet in orbit, ready to retaliate at the first sign of invasion. But the sky didn't fall. The shields didn't break. The weapons never fired. Instead, the planet's core communications array, the heart of its neural grid, simply turned to dust, not exploded, not melted, disintegrated, no tremor. No radiation, just a faint flicker and then powder. Within moments, the planetary AI lost its mind, not corrupted, not hacked, just forgot itself, forgot what it was, what it did, how to be. The ground defenses powered down. The orbiting fleet froze, command protocols severed mid-thought. Then, one by one, the ships started to drift, engines intact, weapons ready, but without purpose, like statues of forgotten gods floating in dead orbit. And Earth still hadn't spoken a word. Across the galaxy, other worlds began to dim, not destroyed, unmade. The essence of conquest is assumption, that one force replaces another, that one empire rises where another falls. But the humans weren't interested in ruling. They weren't taking power. They were removing it from the equation. They walked into systems like surgeons, precision strikes, zero casualties, no bloodshed, because nothing was left that could bleed. They'd drop one shard of something into the atmosphere, something small, unnoticed, often mistaken for space debris. And within days, entire cities would be quiet, not abandoned, just unreal. Walk into a home and find furniture without texture. Touch the floor and feel no temperature. Walls would no longer echo. Glass would refuse to reflect. It was like they weren't erasing matter, they were erasing meaning. Observers called it reality fade, like watching your own house forget how to be solid. And it didn't stop there. Language began to unravel. On Discar Prime, scholars reported written words losing consistency, letters rearranging themselves while still being read, laws rewritten mid-clause, names dissolving into static on public screens. One report claimed that planetary history was being flattened, entire events removed from memory and record, not by censorship, but by some alien form of conceptual deletion. Not conquest, just deletion. What terrified people most was how clean it all was, how merciful it looked on the surface. There were no screams, no smoke, no starving refugees, no fire falling from the sky. Just silence, cold, clinical, inevitable. And when leaders tried to rally, when they demanded to know what humanity wanted, there was never an answer, only a returned signal, encoded with patterns that triggered seizures in diplomats and recursive loops in their AI interpreters. Not a message meant to be read, just one meant to remind that you're still trying to understand something that doesn't recognize you as relevant anymore. This wasn't invasion. This was correction, a rebalancing of a universe gone crooked. Some theorized it was punishment. Others believed it was a test. But the most terrifying theory of all, that humanity wasn't angry, that this wasn't revenge, that this wasn't war. It was maintenance. They weren't destroying systems. They were cleaning them, like digital janitors with omniscient tools, like librarians returning books that should never have been written, like reality had gotten out of hand, and someone finally stood up and said, "This doesn't belong." The Tribunal tried countermeasures, metacode disruptors, multi-layered reality anchors, even literal time reversal pockets. None of it mattered. because nothing they deployed operated outside assumption, and humans had already surpassed the level where assumptions mattered. One system, Cyrillian Reach, attempted a full evacuation. 40 million citizens scattered across emergency jump gates, fleeing towards safe quadrants. They never arrived, not because they were intercepted, but because every ship, every particle of every ship, was gently, precisely misplaced. The data logs showed clean jumps, stable coordinates, but instead of emergence, each ship simply didn't. No explosions, no wreckage, no trail, just gone, and in their place, empty space that somehow felt like a warning, like the absence meant something. The phenomenon gained a name, zero after, as in zero evidence, zero residue, zero continuation, no conquest, just endings. And this is where even the most rational minds began to fracture. Because what do you do when your enemy doesn't kill you? They remove the need for you. When they don't fight to survive, but exist to redesign, it became clear. This was not war on any scale the galaxy had prepared for. This was the scrubbing of the whiteboard, and humans weren't using fire to do it. They were using silence, precision, elegance. They were making the galaxy more efficient by eliminating what no longer served its function, including ideas, nations, languages, entire planetary cultures. It was no longer about winning or losing. It was about being necessary, and one by one, the stars began to go dim, not as a natural process, but like a great editor crossing out paragraphs of a book that no longer made sense. And in the growing dark, Earth still glowed, not with fire, not with threat, but with certainty, the kind that doesn't ask permission, the kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that simply unhooks the fabric of everything you thought was permanent, and quietly folds it away.
Dark background, slow, meditative gong, calm, deep voice begins. You want success, but your mind is crowded. You chase it, you fight for it, yet it slips away. Why? Because deep inside, there's something quietly sabotaging you, doubt. Not the world, not your circumstances, not your past, but the silent voice that whispers, what if I fail? What if I'm not enough? Until you master this inner voice, success will always feel out of reach. But when you learn to remove doubt, to discipline your mind, success becomes unshakable. 1. Doubt is the root of failure. Remove it first. True success begins by removing inner doubt, not chasing external results. Doubt slows action, paralyzes decision making, and kills momentum. 2. Awareness creates power. Observe your mind. The first step to transformation is awareness. You cannot defeat what you cannot see. Observe the patterns of fear, hesitation, and self-criticism. 3. Discipline is the destroyer of doubt. Structure your life. Keep your promises. When you live with discipline, doubt has no space to survive. You build self-trust and mental strength. 4. Stillness over noise. Find strength in silence. The world is loud, but silence is where clarity lives. You win by listening to your inner world more than the outer noise. 5. Train daily mind, body, spirit in alignment. Success is not a one-time act. It's daily training. Train your mind through focus, your body through movement, and your spirit through awareness. 6. Let go of needing approval. Walk alone when necessary. You don't need applause to keep going. Some paths require solitude. The deeper your silence, the stronger your presence becomes. 7. Commit without emotion. Be ruthlessly consistent. Don't rely on motivation. Rely on your mission. Stay consistent whether you feel good or not. Consistency kills resistance. 8. You become unshakable when you control the inner world. Nothing outside you can break you when your inner world is mastered. Your energy, your focus, your peace, that's unshakable success. Let me know which key point you'd like me to expand into a full speech segment next, or if you want timestamps and video structuring. There comes a moment in every journey when you realize it's not the outside world you're fighting, it's yourself. The thoughts in your head, the feelings you bury, the doubt that creeps in when no one else is around to see you struggle. You might have dreams, ambitions, goals that keep you awake at night, but what truly keeps you from acting is not a lack of talent, not even a lack of time. It's the invisible weight of doubt. Doubt is not always loud. Sometimes it speaks in whispers. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail again? What if I try and still lose? These questions don't just slow you down, they imprison your potential. Success doesn't begin with more knowledge or more opportunities. It begins with clarity, and clarity starts when you stop listening to the lies doubt feeds you. Many people spend their entire lives trying to add more effort, more tools, more motivation, hoping something outside of them will save them, but very few ever think to subtract. Few ever realize that what's holding them back is not that they're missing something, but that they're carrying something that was never meant to be there. That thing is doubt. You have to learn to remove it. Not just suppress it, not just distract yourself from it, but actually face it, question it, understand where it comes from, and then choose to let it go. Doubt often grows from past failures, from voices we heard as children, from fear that we've allowed to live rent-free in our minds. But here's the truth. Just because a thought shows up doesn't mean it's real. Just because a voice speaks doesn't mean it speaks the truth. You must become selective with what you allow to grow inside your mind. When you wake up and feel that hesitation, that pull to stay comfortable, that whisper saying, "You're not ready," that is your opponent. Not the person ahead of you, not the one who criticizes you, but that invisible force that tries to keep you small. If you don't fight it, it grows. If you let it settle, it becomes part of you. But the more you confront it, the smaller it becomes. Removing doubt is not a one-time event. It is a practice, a discipline, a daily decision. It means showing up even when you don't feel ready. It means speaking even when your voice shakes. It means acting before the fear can take over. You remove doubt by replacing it with something stronger, conviction. Conviction in your purpose, conviction in your training, conviction in your ability to improve. Doubt cannot exist in a heart that is committed to growth. Think of it this way. Imagine trying to light a fire while pouring water on it every few seconds. That's what doubt does to your motivation. You might have the spark, the desire, even the energy, but if your inner dialogue keeps pouring water on the flame, it will never grow. Your job is to protect that fire, to shield it with self-belief, to feed it with consistent action. And how do you build that belief? Through evidence, through proving to yourself that you can follow through. Every small action, every time you do what you said you would do, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. That's how belief is built, not in grand moments, but in the quiet, disciplined ones. Doubt is removed through demonstration, by doing the work, not thinking about it. But this is also where silence becomes your teacher. You don't need to announce your journey to everyone. You don't need applause or validation. The strongest battles are fought in silence. The most powerful victories happen when no one is watching, when you face your demons alone and still choose to move forward. When you stop asking for permission and start acting with purpose. And it's in this stillness that you realize something important. The goal was never to be perfect. The goal was to be consistent, to keep moving, to keep refining your mind, to keep showing up despite fear, despite doubt, despite resistance. The goal is to become unshakable, not because life is easy, but because your inner world is strong. When I train, I don't just train the body. I train the mind. Every movement is a meditation. Every repetition is a reminder. I am stronger than my doubt. And this is what I teach. Not just martial arts, but mental mastery, the kind of strength that doesn't break under pressure, the kind of clarity that cuts through noise, the kind of discipline that transforms chaos into calm. So if you want unshakable success, don't start by doing more. Start by removing what's holding you back. Strip away the lies, the fear, the self-imposed limitations. Doubt is the first thing you must let go of, because once it's gone, everything else becomes possible. Shi giving speech. Many people try to change their lives without ever understanding their mind. They chase results, they push harder, they want transformation, but they forget the source of all movement is the mind itself. Without awareness, there is no control. Without awareness, you are simply reacting to life instead of consciously creating it. You must realize something. Your mind is the lens through which you see the world. If that lens is clouded with fear, pain, regret, and noise, then everything you see will be distorted. It doesn't matter how much potential you have, how hard you try, or how strong your desire is. If your perception is unclear, your actions will always misfire. This is why awareness is not optional. It is the foundation of all growth. When I train my students, I do not just teach them techniques. I train their awareness, to feel the body, to sense the breath, to observe the mind. Because if you cannot notice your own thoughts, they will control you. If you cannot see the habits that sabotage you, you will repeat them endlessly. Awareness is what separates the conscious from the conditioned, and until you wake up to how your mind works, you are not free. You are just functioning on autopilot. Doubt often hides behind speed. People stay busy so they don't have to feel. They chase noise because silence would reveal too much. But if you want to remove doubt, you must be willing to sit in silence and observe the thoughts that arise. Not judge them, not fight them, simply observe. The moment you start to watch your own mind, a space is created. That space is where power begins. That space is where choice enters. You are not your thoughts. This is one of the first truths I teach. You are the one who hears them, and if you can hear them, you can change them. But first, you must see them clearly. Most people act on impulse. They react from emotion. They carry old beliefs like baggage, never questioning where those beliefs came from. Maybe someone told you when you were young that you weren't smart enough. Maybe you failed once, and now you assume you'll fail again. But these ideas are not truth. They are just mental impressions. And with awareness, you can dissolve them. The mind is like a garden. If you are not aware of what's growing there, weeds will take over. And the longer you ignore those weeds, the deeper their roots go. But when you develop awareness, you can gently remove what doesn't serve you, and in its place, you plant thoughts that align with your highest potential. Some people say, Shi I try to think positively, but it doesn't work. I tell them, it is not about forcing a new thought. It is about understanding the old one. Awareness is not suppression, it is observation. When you shine light on a shadow, the shadow disappears. In the same way, when you look directly at your limiting beliefs with awareness, they begin to dissolve. This is the path of mental clarity. This is the path of true transformation. It's not always easy to look within. Sometimes what you see might scare you. Your fear, your insecurity, your self-sabotage. But remember, awareness does not judge, it simply sees. The more you practice this internal seeing, the more power you gain, because you're no longer blindly reacting to life. You're no longer a puppet of your emotions. You become the observer, and from that place, you can choose your response. You can take back control. This is why stillness is such a powerful teacher. When you sit in silence, when you turn inward, you begin to notice the patterns of your mind. The voices that speak in fear, the distractions you run toward, the excuses you've been repeating for years, and then, slowly, you begin to see through them. You realize you don't have to be a prisoner of your conditioning. You can choose a different way. With awareness, doubt loses its grip, because doubt thrives in the unconscious. It thrives when you're not paying attention, but when you start to notice it, name it, and question it, it begins to fade. And in its place comes clarity, confidence, focus. This doesn't require special talent. It requires practice. Every moment of mindfulness, every breath taken with intention, every time you catch yourself drifting and return to the present, that is training. And over time, the mind becomes sharp, like a sword forged in silence. You begin to trust yourself, not because you are perfect, but because you are aware. You can adjust, you can shift, you can choose. That is freedom, and freedom is the first step to success that cannot be shaken. Shi Hengyi giving speech. There is something very important that must be understood. Doubt does not survive in a disciplined environment. It thrives in chaos, it feeds on inconsistency, it multiplies when there is no structure. But once you bring discipline into your life, doubt starts to starve. It no longer has space to grow. Discipline is often misunderstood. People hear the word and think it means being hard on yourself, punishing yourself, never resting. But true discipline is not punishment. True discipline is protection. You are protecting your mind from its own weakness. You are protecting your time from being wasted. You are protecting your potential from being scattered. When you wake up in the morning and choose discipline, you are saying, I will not be controlled by how I feel today. I will not let my emotions decide if I will follow through. I will not wait for motivation to strike. I act because I decided to. That is strength. That is power. Doubt often appears when you hesitate, when you pause too long before doing what you know must be done. It comes in that small window where you delay. But when your life is built on discipline, you remove that window. You don't give doubt a chance to whisper in your ear. You simply act. Discipline is not about perfection. It's about consistency. You may fail, you may fall, but you get back up again and again because you are not acting based on results. You are acting based on who you have chosen to become. The problem many people face is that they only work hard when they feel inspired. They only keep their promises when it's convenient, but success does not care how you feel. Life does not reward emotion, it rewards action, and action must be consistent, especially when you don't feel like it. There will be days when you feel tired, unmotivated, discouraged. That's normal, but discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It only asks one question: did you do what you said you would do? And when the answer is yes, something powerful happens inside you. You build trust with yourself. You begin to believe that you are reliable, that you are strong, that you are capable. Doubt cannot survive in the presence of that kind of self-trust, because every act of discipline is a small declaration: I am not weak. I am not a victim of circumstance. I am the creator of my future. If you want unshakable success, build systems that do not rely on mood. Create routines that anchor you when the world becomes chaotic. Train your mind to show up not only when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. That's where real growth happens. That's where doubt is defeated. This is something I've learned deeply through years of training. In martial arts, you don't just train when you feel ready. You train every day, rain or shine, excited or tired, because the body and the mind must both be conditioned, and conditioning happens through repetition. Through discipline, through the quiet, ordinary moments that most people ignore. People think mastery is a gift, but mastery is built through discipline, through doing the same thing 1,000 times with presence, with focus, with commitment. And that same principle applies to every area of life. Your mind, your business, your relationships, everything improves through discipline. It's important to understand that discipline is not a burden. It is freedom. Most people think freedom is doing whatever you want, whenever you want. But that kind of freedom often leads to chaos. True freedom is having the power to act according to your values, not your feelings. To stay on your path even when it's uncomfortable, to live on purpose. When you remove discipline, you invite disorder, and where there is disorder, doubt finds a home. But when you live with discipline, you become grounded. You walk with purpose, you speak with clarity, you move with force. Doubt becomes quiet, fear becomes smaller, and your actions become sharp, precise, unstoppable. I've seen it again and again. The students who are disciplined become the strongest. Not just physically, but mentally. They don't break when pressure comes. They don't fall apart when things go wrong, because their strength doesn't come from emotion. It comes from training, from discipline. If you are serious about winning in life, then stop waiting to feel ready. Start building the discipline that will carry you through the days you don't. Set the routine, keep the promise, do it even when no one sees you. Especially then, that is when it matters most. Every day you choose discipline, you silence doubt a little more, until one day you realize it doesn't control you anymore. You've built something stronger. You've built a mind that doesn't flinch, a spirit that doesn't bend, a life that doesn't fall apart under pressure. Shihengyi giving speech. In today's world, silence has become rare. Every moment is filled with noise, notifications, opinions, conversations, distractions. But real power, real success, is not found in the noise. It is found in stillness. The world may shout at you to move faster, to be louder, to always do more. But stillness is the place where strength is born. When the mind is constantly stimulated, it cannot focus. It cannot see clearly. A clouded mind makes poor decisions not because the person is weak, but because they are overwhelmed. In that chaos, doubt grows quickly. It hides in the rush, in the urgency, in the overstimulation. But when you slow down, when you become still, you begin to see what truly matters. Many people confuse movement with progress. They stay busy, always doing, always running, but never arriving. Stillness is not the absence of action. It is the presence of clarity, and clarity leads to the right action. When you are still, you do not react. You respond, you do not guess. You know. Stillness allows you to hear the quiet voice within. The one that knows your truth. The one that is not concerned with noise or praise or opinion. This voice gets drowned in the chaos of daily life, but it is always there waiting for you to listen. And when you do, doubt begins to disappear because your inner voice does not speak in fear. It speaks in understanding. It reminds you who you are when the world tries to tell you otherwise. You cannot build an unshakable life on a foundation of constant noise. You need silence to see yourself clearly. And only when you see yourself clearly can you remove what is false, what is not yours. Most of the doubt you carried did not begin with you. It was inherited from the noise of others, expectations, judgments, comparisons. Stillness helps you separate what belongs to you from what was imposed on you. I often say to my students, train the body, but more importantly, train the mind. Physical movement must be balanced with mental stillness. In martial arts, you don't just strike with force. You strike with awareness. You move from stillness. This is what makes the movement powerful. It's not about speed, it's about timing. It's not about being busy. It's about being precise. Success is not just about going forward. Sometimes it is about standing still, regaining focus, and realigning with your purpose. Stillness teaches you to wait for the right moment, not out of fear, but out of intelligence. And when you act from that place, your actions have power behind them, not desperation, not panic, but calm, focused energy. Doubt weakens when the mind is still, because in stillness you begin to see what is real and what is imagined. You begin to realize how many of your fears are just thoughts, nothing more. They are not facts. They are temporary, like clouds in the sky, and the more still you become, the more those clouds pass, until the sky of your mind is clear. That is when you see your next move. That is when clarity returns. Stillness is also where your energy regenerates. You don't grow stronger by constantly pushing. You grow stronger by balancing effort with rest, movement with pause. A warrior knows this. A wise mind honors this. In stillness, your nervous system calms. Your breathing deepens. Your awareness sharpens. You step out of the reaction and into the response. You move from a place of inner control. In the Shaolin tradition, meditation is not something extra. It is essential. We sit, we breathe, we observe. This is not about escaping life. It is about entering life fully, without distraction. When you are still, even for just a few minutes each day, you begin to notice the subtle things. your breathing, your thoughts, your posture. You start to become aware of how you live, and once you are aware, you can begin to improve it. Stillness is not weakness, it is control. It is the space between stimulus and response. It is the pause that gives power to your next move. The most dangerous person in the room is not the one who reacts first, but the one who remains calm, because calmness is a sign of mastery. If you want to remove doubt and build unshakable success, learn to create moments of stillness in your day. Sit in silence, observe your thoughts, watch your breath, and just be. In that space, strength is built. Direction is regained and clarity is restored. You do not need to rush. You do not need to chase. Sometimes you simply need to stop and return to yourself. There is more power in one moment of stillness than in 1,000 actions taken in confusion. Shi Hengyi giving speech. Success is not something you visit. It is something you live, and to live it, you must train for it. Daily, not just occasionally, not when you feel inspired, but every day. Because what you do consistently becomes who you are. If you want to become unshakable, you must align your mind, your body, and your spirit through daily training. This is not a one-dimensional journey. It is a complete way of living. The mistake many people make is believing they can succeed with a strong mind and a weak body, or a focused body but an undisciplined spirit. But these parts are not separate. They influence each other. If the body is tired, the mind becomes restless. If the mind is chaotic, the body becomes sluggish. And if the spirit is disconnected, both mind and body suffer. You cannot afford that disconnection. You must train all three in unity. Training the body does not mean chasing a perfect physique. It means developing strength, endurance, and discipline. A strong body creates a solid foundation for a strong mind. When you push through physical resistance, you teach the mind that it can endure discomfort, and that lesson carries into every area of your life. Through movement, you discover your capacity, you develop grit. You learn how to keep going even when it hurts. Training the mind requires something different. It's not about force, it's about focus. It's about discipline in thought, about choosing what to pay attention to and what to let go. The undisciplined mind chases every thought, every distraction, every doubt. But the trained mind returns to center. It sees clearly. It does not react to every fear or desire. It observes, and from that observation comes control. Mental training means creating space between stimulus and response. That space is where strength grows. Then there is the spirit, the energy that connects everything. Training the spirit means reconnecting to your purpose, your inner values, your why. Without this, the body becomes mechanical and the mind becomes rigid. But when the spirit is alive, every movement has meaning, every thought has direction. You are not just working hard, you are working with intention. The spirit gives life to the routine. It reminds you that this journey is not just about achievement, but about growth, about mastery, about becoming who you were meant to be. All three, mind, body, and spirit, must be trained daily. Not out of pressure, but out of respect. Respect for the gift of life. Respect for the time you've been given. When you stop training, you stop evolving. And when you stop evolving, doubt finds its way back in. That's why discipline is not a punishment. It is a form of gratitude. You show respect to yourself by preparing, by sharpening, by showing up. Each day, you are either reinforcing weakness or reinforcing strength. There is no neutral. Your habits are votes for the person you want to become. When you train your body, you're voting for resilience. When you focus your mind, you're voting for clarity. When you feed your spirit, you're voting for inner peace. These are not small acts, these are the building blocks of success. Most people want success to come quickly, they want change to happen overnight, but transformation is not a moment, it's a process, a daily process. And the people who become unshakable are the ones who embrace that process. They are not distracted by the result, they are devoted to the practice. This is something I have lived every day in the monastery. Before the sun rises, we begin training. not because we are forced to, but because we choose to. We train the body through movement, we train the mind through meditation, we train the spirit through reflection. Not once a week, not just when it's convenient, every day, because we understand that the self must be sculpted continuously, like water shaping stone, not through force but through consistency. If you neglect one part of yourself, the other parts will eventually suffer. You must maintain balance, mind sharp, body strong, spirit rooted. When these three are aligned, you become centered, and when you are centered, no external event can shake you. You no longer chase success. You carry it, it becomes the way you move, the way you breathe, the way you live. So the question is not whether you will have doubts, the question is whether you will be prepared when they come. Daily training prepares you. It gives you armor, it gives you awareness, it gives you inner strength that does not depend on outside circumstances. To train daily is to honor your journey, to show yourself that you are worth the effort, that your future is worth the discipline, that your peace is worth protecting. The body may get tired, the mind may wander, but the spirit must always remind you why you began, and that reminder comes, not from waiting for motivation, but from choosing to train every single day. Shi Hengyi giving speech. One of the most difficult lessons you must learn on the path to unshakable success is that not everyone will understand your journey, not everyone will support you, not everyone will see what you see. And that is okay. You must let go of needing their approval, because the more you seek to please others, the more disconnected you become from yourself. Many people stay stuck in average lives not because they lack talent, but because they fear being alone. They fear judgment, they fear stepping away from the crowd, they fear disappointing others more than they fear disappointing themselves, and so they live small, quiet, comfortable, but that is not the way of the warrior. That is not the path of mastery. You must be willing to walk alone when necessary. You must be willing to be misunderstood, to be questioned, to be doubted by others, while you continue walking with conviction. Because the truth is, no one else has your vision. No one else hears what you hear deep inside, that voice inside of you. It's not meant to be heard by the crowd. It's a sacred message, and it belongs to you. You were not born to seek permission. You were born to express truth, and truth does not always get applause. In fact, the more honest you become with yourself, the more uncomfortable it makes others. Because it reminds them of what they're not doing, of how they've settled, so they may criticize you, they may laugh, they may walk away. Let them. There is a silent power in knowing who you are, even when no one claps for you. There is a deep confidence that arises when you stop looking outward and start standing inward. It is in solitude, not in noise, that you discover your true self. When you stop performing and start listening, that's when growth begins. I have walked this path myself. There were times when I stood in silence while others doubted. There were times I chose discipline over comfort, purpose over popularity. It was not always easy, but those quiet steps, those moments without support, became the foundation of my strength. Because when you no longer need anyone to believe in you, you become unstoppable. Approval is temporary. It rises and falls with people's moods, their projections, their own insecurities. You cannot build your life on such unstable ground. If you live by praise, you will die by criticism. But if you live by principle, you will stand firm no matter what. So ask yourself honestly, how much of your doubt is coming from within, and how much is inherited from others? How much of your hesitation is based on someone else's fear, not your own? You must begin to separate the voices in your head. Which ones are truly yours? Which ones belong to people who gave up on themselves long ago? This separation is vital, because when you let go of needing approval, a strange thing happens. You begin to respect yourself more. You start making decisions that align with your inner values, not someone else's expectations. You begin to act from peace, not from pressure, and this is the birthplace of real freedom. There's a strength that comes from being willing to stand alone, a clarity that only reveals itself in solitude. You realize you don't need everyone, you just need discipline, truth, and the courage to walk your own path. And when you do, when you walk without applause, without validation, without anyone cheering, you build a foundation that no one can shake. Eventually, those who once doubted will begin to notice, but by then, you won't care, because you will have already become the person you were meant to be. Without their permission, you will have already won the battle within. And that is the only victory that truly matters. The warrior does not seek the crowd. The warrior sharpens himself in silence, and when the time is right, he moves with precision, not for approval, but for purpose. So let go of trying to be liked. Let go of needing everyone to understand. Let go of seeking validation for your every move. You are not here to fit in. You are here to become. If you must walk alone for a season, walk with strength. If no one believes in you, believe anyway. If they doubt you, keep moving. Your mission is not to be accepted. Your mission is to become unshakable. Shihengi, giving speech. There is a powerful shift that happens when you stop waiting to feel ready and start acting from commitment. This is the point where most people fall behind. They are driven by emotion, by how they feel moment to moment. One day they're focused, the next day distracted. One week they're on fire, the next they're full of excuses. This cycle of emotional dependency creates weakness. It feeds inconsistency, and inconsistency feeds doubt. But when you commit without emotion, when you decide to act regardless of your mood, you enter a different level of discipline. You no longer ask yourself, do I feel like it today? Instead, you ask one question, did I promise myself this? If the answer is yes, you follow through, simple, clear, ruthless. This is how strong people operate. Your emotions are not the enemy, but they are not reliable leaders either. Emotions fluctuate. Some days you will feel motivated, other days you will feel empty, but your commitment must remain steady. If you want unshakable success, you need unshakable follow-through. You need to build routines that do not rely on how you feel, but are anchored in who you are becoming. Ruthless consistency does not mean working without rest. It means showing up, even in the smallest way, every single day. It means keeping your word to yourself when no one is watching. It means executing your habits whether you feel inspired or not. This is how confidence is built, not through external validation, but through internal alignment. Through being someone you can trust. If you look closely, you'll see that most of your doubts appear when you break promises to yourself. You said you'd wake up early, but you didn't. You said you'd train, but you skipped. You said you'd stay focused, but you scrolled for hours. Each broken promise adds a layer of doubt. It whispers, you can't rely on yourself. And over time you believe it, but the reverse is also true. When you honor your word, even in small things, your inner voice begins to change. It begins to say, you can do this. You are consistent. You are strong. You don't need a perfect day. You need a committed day. You don't need overwhelming motivation. You need unwavering direction. This is how you separate yourself from the average. Most people only work when it's easy. They only push when there's hype. But success belongs to those who keep going in silence, without emotion, without applause, without shortcuts. I have seen this lesson again and again in my years of training. The student who shows up every day, quietly, steadily, becomes stronger than the one who is brilliant but inconsistent. Because in time, consistency beats intensity. It's not what you do once. It's what you repeat that shapes you. The world does not reward your intentions. It rewards your execution. You might have powerful goals, but without discipline, they remain dreams. You might have the best strategy, but without action, it means nothing. Action, done consistently, is what builds momentum, and momentum, built without emotion, is unstoppable. There will be days when everything inside you wants to quit. When your body is tired, when your mind is filled with doubt. But those are the days that define your future. Those are the days where you must act without emotion, where you move anyway, train anyway, write anyway, show up anyway. These are the days where warriors are made. It's not always about doing more. Sometimes it's just about doing what you said you would do. That level of consistency over time will outperform almost anything else. Because while others stop and start, you keep building. While others doubt, you keep moving. While others complain, you stay focused. Let go of the need to feel perfect. Let go of the expectation to always be inspired. You will not always feel strong, but you can always choose discipline. You can always return to your routine. You can always honor your path. When you no longer wait for emotion, you free yourself. You become the master, not the slave. You begin to move from a deeper place, from your vision, from your mission, from your higher self. This is the path of the unshakable. This is how you remove doubt and win. So, ask yourself, what would my life look like if I simply kept my word? If I acted without negotiation, if I followed through, not once in a while, but every single day? The answer is simple. You would become someone powerful, someone consistent, someone rare. Shi Hengyi giving speech. When most people think of strength, they imagine something external, status, wealth, achievement, recognition, but all of these things can be taken away. They are temporary, they are vulnerable. True strength, the kind that cannot be moved, does not come from what you build on the outside. It comes from the world within. You become unshakable when you master your inner world, when you no longer react to every emotion, every doubt, every distraction, when you stop being pulled by opinions, or paralyzed by fear, or seduced by comfort. Control of the inner world is what separates those who last from those who only appear strong on the surface. Every day, you are faced with choices, not just the obvious ones, but subtle choices. Will I focus or drift? Will I stay calm or give in to anger? Will I speak truth or seek approval? These decisions are not made in public. They are made in silence deep within, and they determine the outcome of your life far more than anything the world sees. Doubt, fear, and anxiety are not the enemy. They are part of being human, but they must not be in control. When your inner world is undisciplined, everything outside feels heavier. Every setback feels personal. Every challenge feels impossible, but when the inner world is trained, you begin to move differently. You respond instead of reacting. You lead yourself instead of being led by impulse. Control of the inner world begins with awareness. You must become the observer of your own mind, your own reactions, your own tendencies. Most people never look inward. They live entirely in reaction to the outside world. If something goes wrong, they get angry. If someone disapproves, they change. If things get hard, they retreat. But what happens when you no longer live that way? What happens when you are anchored inside, no matter what shakes around you? The answer is, you become dangerous, in the best way. Not aggressive, but centered. Not loud, but powerful. You develop presence. You walk into situations with a calm mind. You think clearly when others panic. You act with purpose when others freeze. You hold your ground when others fall apart. That's the mark of someone who has trained not just the body, but the mind and the spirit. This kind of strength cannot be faked. You cannot pretend to be calm when your mind is chaotic. You cannot fake presence when your emotions are running wild. It must be built through daily practice, through watching yourself, through catching the reactions before they take over, through choosing stillness instead of noise. When I teach, I don't just guide students in physical movement. I teach them how to return to themselves, how to regulate the breath, how to quiet the mind, how to notice when the ego wants to take over. This is the deeper training, because when you can remain calm and clear inside, you are free. You are no longer owned by your circumstances. You are no longer controlled by the opinions of others. You move from strength, not survival. There will always be challenges. There will always be setbacks. But the person who is grounded within does not collapse when things go wrong. They adjust, they adapt, they rise again. Not because it's easy, but because their center is stable. And from that inner center, anything is possible. Control of the inner world does not mean suppressing emotion. It means not being ruled by it. You feel the fear, but you don't let it guide your decisions. You hear the doubt, but you don't obey it. You experience the chaos, but you choose to respond with calm. That is real power, that is control. The greatest enemy of your success is not failure. It is the storm inside that you haven't yet mastered. The stories you tell yourself, the beliefs you carry, the emotions you haven't learned to manage. If you want to become unshakable, you must face all of these things, not with aggression, but with stillness and awareness, with discipline. This is why stillness is so often misunderstood. People think stillness means inaction. But stillness is the source of powerful action. It is from inner quiet that the clearest decisions are made. It is from inner control that the most precise moves are taken. This is how warriors live. They don't move more. They move with purpose. They don't react. They choose. They don't chase. They attract. And this begins with mastering the space inside you. So if your outer world feels chaotic, don't start by changing everything around you. Start with what's within. Ask yourself, is my mind focused? Is my breath steady? Is my intention clear? The moment you return to yourself, the world outside begins to respond differently, because energy does not lie. A person who is aligned inside carries an energy that can't be shaken. This is not easy, but it is worth it, because when you become the master of your inner world, no one, not failure, not fear, not doubt, can touch the core of who you are. The secret to unshakable success is not found in books or strategies. It is found in your ability to conquer yourself. The battle is not out there, it is within. So today, sit with yourself, face your doubt, and remove it one disciplined action at a time. Train your body, train your mind, and success will not be a question. It will become your natural state. This is the way of the warrior. This is the way of clarity. This is the path to winning without fear. I am Shi Hengyi, and this is your reminder. Silence the doubt, focus the mind, and success will follow.